some of those important ways of how we can look about maximizing the profit potential that is there within your organization across different departments, not just think about rooms, but across in general as well. Now, I generally do not like to start off with an agenda because I think that is very passe, right? It doesn't really add any value to a session that you're having. But I would generally start off with a story. But today, maybe I'm going to start off with a question, right? I know it is about the year-end period. Most of you have already started with the budget, or somebody, some of you have already completed the budgets as well. What if I told you that your budget, how confident of are you with the accuracy of reaching it? And more importantly, what if I told you that, look, you are targeting way low in terms of what you could have achieved if you put in your efforts correctly in with the right tools and the right processes going ahead for your property? With that, I think I'll explore more about what I mean about that question as we go through some of these points that I'm taking you through as well. I need to pull up. I love stats here, and I think one of the key stats that has come to, or rather, enlightened us over the last year or so, is the one that I'm putting up on my screen now, which says that look, if you increase your forecast accuracy by even about 3%, that equates to about 2% increase in your profit. And I know, speaking to a lot of hotels, not just within India, but across Asia Pacific and the globe as well, that forecasting has not been easy over the last couple of years, or the last year, or the last few months. Uh, you could say that, look, my forecasting accuracy is well within the plus or minus 5% number. But then that's typically when I hear revenue managers speak about it, revenue leaders, it's through the month. When you drill down at a week level, at a day by day level, that is when you understand that some days we're off by 10%, other days we're off by 20% plus or minus. And that is where it becomes more and more difficult from a profitability perspective, right? Because when you are able to plan your daily operations and strategy based upon the forecasting that you've come up with, and that forecasting is accurate, that is when this translates to about 2% additional increase in profitability. And I know of many hotels who've been able to achieve this using the right technology and the process as well. I'll be guilty of repeating the tools and the processes throughout the session today, but I think it's more of a gentle reminder to everybody here that what is the effect that these can have on your numbers. The last few years have not been really the best of the times, but it has also taught us a lot in terms of what is required from a hotel perspective, from a technology perspective, and so on and so forth. Right? I've listed down a few here, but I think one of the key things that I've learned from a lot of leaders across is that while it has become difficult, it is also manually, if you want to keep track about the changes and react quickly to what is happening in the market, the lead times changing, the patterns changing, the length of stay, the day of week patterns changing. It's significantly difficult to do it on a manual environment, whereas the technology has to be more and more agile from what it was previously. A lot of hotels had also very clearly outlined that they need assistance with not just the technology, but also how do you manage, right? How do you look at the different trends that comes in, out, make sense of it? What is the information that needs to be looked at as well? And more importantly, with the low demand periods that exist as a part of the cycle, how do we get the most out of those periods as well, not just the busy period that we speak about? And one of the quickest way to do that is obviously pricing. We all know that, isn't it? I think the first lessons of revenue management is to price right at the right time, right? And that is where pricing comes in. Now, we've got a bunch of options available when you go into the market, go from one hotel to another on how the pricing approach is taken. Right? Some hotels follow a daily pricing approach. Some of them follow a length of stay pricing approach, but there are very few hotels who follow a continuous pricing approach. Now, that is very different, right? I'll give you an example here. For example, let's say a property in Jaipur, right? You may have a price of about 10,000. The next bar level that you have set up in your system could be about 11,000. right? What if the market sensitivity today is to pay only a price of 10,250 or 10,750? By pricing high, 11,000, or by pricing low of 10,000, either ways, either extremes, you're either leaving the demand or leaving the demand in the market or leaving some money on the table. Not a profitable scenario for each of you, right? Each of those scenarios. And we have stats here, right? At the bottom of the screen, you can see those green boxes. We have stats here working with a lot of hotels and research that we've done that if you look at the continuous pricing approach that I was talking about, that yields the maximum in terms of profitability that can come across for your property. Now, with pricing and the price sensitivity that I spoke about also comes in what I call here the slippery slope. I was recently in a GM's roundtable in a capital just about a few weeks back. And one of the things that came across was that hotels were hesitant to increase the price. Why? While the ADRs have increased significantly, but there's still a slight hesitance, right, in terms of, should I be increasing the price or not? And there's a great example that I have here very recently, right? I was checking in one of the hotels, and there was a group checking in as well. There was a request for one of the rooms for an early check-in, right? And you could see from the GREs or whoever was the responsible person at that point of time that that was receptive, right? They felt that, okay, let me go back and check if an early check-in is possible. But as soon as this was mentioned, right, there were a couple of other team group members as well who came in and said that, look, we are also early. We also want an early check-in, and that is where you can sense that slippery slope coming in through, right? That representative went back to the desk, looked at looked at the screen, fidgeted through it, and then came back and said that, look, unfortunately, we cannot give any one room also for an early check-in, but we would have to wait for maybe an hour or more. But that's the slippery slope that I'm talking about, right? At times, you could be greedy by going in for a very high price, or at times, you could be very conservative and not really increase your price. But how do you realize what slope is the best for you, or how high can you go before it starts impacting your price or demand negatively? That is the decision that needs to be made, and that is where I think a lot of reluctance that I spoke about earlier comes in from the hotels, because they don't really are not really aware of what is the benchmark where it can tilt against them if they start demanding more price. And that's exactly where AI or a tool can help you. Now, this question about the slippery slope that I was speaking about is not just at the hotel level, right? Take at the simplest of the hotels. You would have at least 3 or 4 room types in the hotel. And that decision of sensitivity needs to be taken across these different room types and products. And that is where your job as a revenue leader in your organizations becomes more critical. Um, and if you're doing it manually, good luck with you. Even the best of the minds, it will be significantly difficult to do this day after day perfectly. Take this example, right? Traditionally, most hotels follow this approach. Right? You see, the blue bar shows the demand at the hotel for a particular room type, and you can see the orange line that is the capacity of the room type. So you can clearly see that your leading room type has more demand than the capacity. A very true scenario across most of the hotels that are generally we see in the market. Now, general instinct is that, look, if the demand is high, why don't we push the price high? Right? You think about the occupancy based pricing, right? You see a lot of bookings coming in for your standard. Your instinct is, let's keep increasing the price. But what you tend to forget is that if you increase the price for your leading room category, that cascades into increasing the price for your next of the room categories as well. And that is where the problem comes in, right? Because you realize that your demand for your for your premium room types were already lower than your capacity, but now you're increasing the price. That means that it's possible that your demand will go sharper or go down further. That's counterproductive in terms of the total revenue that you can get, and that is where a room type yielding strategy comes in really effective. Becomes really effective for you if you can now manage those offsets, or what we call the supplements, or the upgrade costs between one room type to another as well dynamically. It will do wonders for you to manage the demand across different room type products, but also pick up the right amount of revenue without losing demand, without leaving money on the table. It's like a game of chess, right? That is, a great analogy that I have, or a metaphor that I have, is, when you take a decision for a particular room type, your decision for the next room type changes. Or, if you broaden the scope and you look at it, your competitive market, you put a price out in the market, the competition reacts, right? Or competition puts the price in the market changes, the dynamic changes. It's like the game of chess, right? You make a move and the board changes, and then you have to then calculatively take the next move as well. It's exactly like how you see, with any of those. We just finished a World Cup, right? Yeah, I don't want to, pull in some bad memories here to begin off the to begin with, but for every match, you would have seen people training, right? You would see those cones and people moving about, right, during a football match as well. Those are all to kind of simulate the changes that happens, or the resistance, or any changes that happens on the board or in the market as you go through your actions. And that is exactly where the AI tools come in to help, because it can start forecasting those market changes should you be attempting a move, or should your competition be attempting a move. And that's significantly difficult to do in a manual approach. Now, and I've seen this across a lot of hotels. We've done studies as well, and that's what, when you see the room type yielding that I was speaking about, um, there is a possibility to increase your profitability by about 5% additional increase in revenue if you follow those room type yielding methodologies that I'm speaking about. Now, we break this down further in our research, and we found that about 65% of it came just by purely room type pricing. If you're able to manage dynamically those room type pricing, it helps you out. But there's another pie of it, right? That's more than three-fourths of, sorry, more than half of it, right? A quarter of it, and that is where it's the overbooking. Now, I recently work with a hotel very close to the city that I am in, Pune, and we realized that while it was a very simple setup that I had, right? During the weekdays, they were in the practice of upgrading their standard room business or reservations to the next room category. Absolutely no issues with it, because during the weekdays, anyways, there was less of demand in the market for your premium room, the larger set of room types that they had. But we saw that during the weekends as well, they were continuing that practice, because it becomes a practice, right? You do something, you put that into your selling strategy, you put that into your booking engines on your brand websites, and it continues over. But there was a marginal increase in the demand for their larger room types during the weekend, but they were not able to take advantage of that because they were continuing to follow the same approach that they did during the weekdays. Well, once you bring that information up, once you use AI to surface that intel and that tactical decision making process, that is when you're able to then significantly yield out of that overbooking as well. You bring down your overbooking for your standard room types, you reduce the number of upgrades, and you increase the number of upsells that you're able to do. That's critical, isn't it? When I, as a guest, go into a hotel, I'm always thinking about upgrades, right? But over the other side of the counter, I think all of we who have worked in operations and in the hotels, they know that an upsell is what is required rather than an upgrade, right? I see more and more hotels tracking this much better now, and that is where I think AI and tools and the analytics that comes in, which helps you push this boundary as well to move on to a stage where you're optimally managing it, right? Your lifetime value of a particular guest that you need to upgrade versus some of the other reservations that you would rather upsell than upgrade. Now, that's additional profitability, but there's more profitability that can come through, right? Um, and and while I go through it, right, if you've got any questions, queries, comments, and if you agree or disagree with what I'm saying, Feel free to use the chat box that we have. Put in those. Somebody will be monitoring it, and we'll have some time to take your question and answers towards the later half as well. Now, when I speak about increasing profitability in quick time, right? There's also this aspect that you see on your screen now. Traditionally, most hotels end up doing pricing or management of revenue optimization only for their rack rate on bar rate, the leisure rate that they have. But you forget, I mean, it's an open question across to the group as well, right? From my operation days, from the hotels that I've been involved in as well, there's so many rates and products that you have. How many room types or rate types that you have? Um, and it's certain that you're not always selling your bar. You're selling possibly bar the least, and then your promotions, your opaque, your advanced purchase, your packages, all of them significantly higher than your bar. So why not optimize them as well? Now, some of the hotels would say, yes, we do that, right? We could do dynamic pricing for the bar, and then accordingly, then we slash the rates, across our these products as well. But that is where I think you lose out. For example, this is what you mentioned, right? This is what most hotels would be doing. Right? The blue one is a dynamic price that you keep talking about. And then there are the child rates, like the advance purchase rate in this example, which is the flat 15% discount, the red line, which follows in tandem with the blue one. Right? But there's a different way of doing that. Right? You would all agree that on a busy day, you don't need to give 15% discount to get that advance purchase business into your property. Whereas on a non-busy day, you might as well have to resort to that kind of a slash off rate from a discount and promotion perspective. And to do this automatically, or let's say manually, is going to take you a significant amount of time, significant amount of data review, analysis, and then looking through different channels and then updating them on your selling network. By the time you do all of that, you're already late. You're behind the curve. And that is where the AI approaches that is available in the market can help you achieve this. It easily translates to that green box, the shaded box that you see, which is the significant increase in revenue that is going to happen, the plus plus effect. So think about this, right? If you're not doing this approach, what you're seeing in those green shaded areas of in terms of revenue is what you're losing out every day by selling those number of packages and the promotions that you have across your different selling environments. And that's critical to understand because many a times we're always thinking about what is the benefit, but you're not thinking about what is the loss if you are continuing with your current approach. And then that's where I've got an example as well, right? Very recently, I was in one of the resorts in the capital, the holiday capital of India, and then you get to see that look, a resort in Goa will behave very differently from a business hotel in Gurgaon, right? Because there you do not have a lot of packages, whereas a resort would have a lot of breakfast packages or some of the spa related packages, depending upon the class of your hotels and so on. And that's where you need to have a perfect mix. At what time should I be protecting my inventory for those packages, whereas should I be leaving my inventory open to pull up the rest of the business? That's a critical decision to be made, and not easy one, as you would all know, right, between the sales and the revenue tussle as well. But speaking of that, right, when we speak about the profitability, we all know we are not just talking about the top line, but also the bottom line. Right? The gap between those two is what we call the profit, right? So while there is a consistent approach to keep updating your ADR, the prices to take your top line revenue up, a lot of leaders that I'm speaking across are also very conscious about their bottom lines as well, because that KPI is now coming in as one that they have to control and responsible for. That is where this study comes in really, really handy for you, that if you're able to now remember the first slide that I spoke about the 3% forecast accuracy, but here, if you're able to control your forecast accuracy or improve your forecast accuracy by even the smallest of the margins of 1%, it translates to about negative 0.5% reduction in your cost. Take an example. I used to work with one of the airport hotels here, as Jacob mentioned, with the Hyatt. Now, we used to have a very busy Saturday occupancy, a Sunday also very busy, and then tapers down the occupancy on a Monday. Now, will that be okay for me to have full staffing at my front office on Saturday and Sunday? Generally, we found out it was not necessary because most of the arrivals were happening on a Saturday with very, very few arrivals on a Sunday because they were staying through and then checking out on a Monday to go to the next city and so on. That is where, if you're able to improve your forecast accuracy, you'll be able to manage your resources, such as housekeeping, front office, and all of the others as well, much better. And we know how difficult it has become now since the last couple of years to get the right resource into your property as well. There's always a constraint. And in terms of resources, right? While we live in a country where there's so much of dearth of resources, there's always the demand is more, but unfortunately that cannot be said about the inventory all of the times in the cities that we are living in, with a burst of inventories and new inventories being added on. But on busy days you will possibly come to these scenarios that you see on my screen now, where your demand in the market is more than what the capacity you have left to sell with. As I can see in this example, I've got 5 rooms of inventory remaining, but about 9 of the guests wanting to stay with all different rate offerings. Uh, the problem is that they all don't come in the same order, right? From the cheapest to the highest rate. It's possible that one of the highest rate comes in early, and then the cheaper rate comes in the last day of the arrival. So it is about managing. When do I protect? What is the so you see the line, the dotted line, the last room value, the LRV, what we call here, or the hurdle, as you see in the market traditionally. How do you come to this value to restrict a particular rate and say that, look, I don't need this rate on this busy day because I know for surety that those other 5 guests who would be paying better than $160 would come in and inquire for a reservation. This is where you know these number of decisions that you have to take on a day-to-day basis, and if you do not use the right technology, the right tools, you will end up losing those revenues that I always speak about. And that's the same example because if you look at it a different way, the same example, and you think about the length of stays now, right? Your rates will differ by the packs, right? If it's a single individual, a couple, a family staying together, there are associated costs as well, and the associated revenues that comes through. So your objective as a revenue manager is not to just manage those leading room type one rate category, but also to manage all of this, right? So, and that's where I say again and again, the number of decisions that you make, right? If you start making those tactical decisions manually, it hampers, right? Because there's a limit to the number of decisions that you can take sanely. But the number of decisions, the more the number it increases, your quality of the decision making also drops down generally in a day. That's where the automation helps you significantly again to increase or maximize that profitability that we've been speaking about today. Speaking of cost and profitability, there's an additional cost that is nowadays being looked at very, very carefully is the cost of acquisition, right? We are obviously dependent not just on our direct channels, on our booking engines, but also a lot of other travel agents, OTAs, channels that sell for us, market for us, and so on. We also need to know that those channels would have different costs associated with it, right? A channel A would have 25% cost, whereas maybe you have got a better contract with the channel B, which gives you about 15% cost to bring in that revenue, right? So it's easy then for you, to manage if you can measure those costs associated as well, right? If you cannot measure something, it's very difficult to manage that. Take an example, right? very recently the latest of the iPhones or any of the new products were released, right? How to what great lengths do we go browsing through sites to see which is the best offer there? Or at times, even thinking about whether I would get it cheaper in US or in Japan, right? And if we can think about for such a decision making activity, those different channels, think about from a business perspective. If you have to control your bottom line, you need to now think about those different cost perspectives of acquisition that comes in along these channels as well. And that's all about surfacing that right intel that you want at the right time, and which is also becoming more and more critical. Right? I remember during my operation days, if I had a tool which was able to surface all the information for me, the right of the business intelligence, my decisions would have been better, faster, and of course cheaper as well. Right? And that's where there's an old age saying that people always have the good intent, but it's the process and the tools that they use which can make your decision wrong or incorrect or the correct one. And that is where you need to ensure that you're able to provide or empower your team or your associated departments as well with the right intel so that they can make that right decision to back up their good intent of having that profitability or the ADR or the RevPAR increase that is required of your asset or for the owners that you committed to. And it's all about deepening and narrowing that intel, right? Because it is not just about getting the information, but also what is the information that you really want to look at. Take, for example, your company. If you're a property which has a lot of corporate and a lot of business coming through, you want to understand how is the company-wide performance, right? Different company contracts performance. What length of stay do they stay? What day of week do they come in? What percentage of bar area do they bring? For me, or maybe it's travel agent, right? Which travel agent is giving me more business on a weekday or a busy day versus a non-busy day? So accordingly, then if I've got that intel, it helps you not just come up with the right pricing, but also helps you with the right tools to empower you, the rest of your team members as well, to make the right decisions. For example, you can help with the finance and procurement team with what is the better contract to go with in considering the facts and leaving the emotions aside of maybe a contract that you've been continuing over the last few years, or with your distribution team members, right? You can significantly reduce the amount of time that they spend in updating the different channels and maintaining rate parity across all of that, right? Campaigns that your marketing team runs, monitoring it, monitoring some data sets to understand what is the best campaigns that run successfully versus the cost associated with as well. Or, for example, when you speak about cost, the cost of displacing your regular business when you pick up a new group. That is what can help your group sales team members. You can partner with your group sales team members to ensure that they're also making those right decisions based upon the facts again and not really getting into tussle with your sales team members where they feel that they are pushing the right rate across, whereas you are insisting no, drop the rates further or increase the rates further. We can command a better rate, and that's where, as a revenue tool, right? There's a myth that this is an RMS is typically only for the revenue leader, but that myth is what we need to break because uh, if the revenue team needs to be accepted across the organization, you need to pass on the right information across to the rest of the team members as well. And that is where the RMS comes in really handy because it's not just a tool for the revenue manager, but for the sales, for the marketing, for your finance, and the rest of the team members as well, from a budgeting and forecasting operation perspectives as well. And that's where, when you speak about technology, right? I constantly say, to Jacob's point, proponent of AI in your organization, I time and again say that it is more like a team member within your organization, a team member without emotions at times, but with the right facts and guiding you in the right direction as well to ensure that you are taking the right decisions at the right time at the right place. Because it takes you away from that very manual approach that you may have been used to without a system, without an AI, and but puts you out into the forefront to ensure that you are bringing in a lot of efficiencies, you are increasing your RevPAR significantly, but also optimizing across the different verticals within your organization as well. Now, a big challenge that I hear a lot of time when I speak about technology is, two big questions: how much time and how much cost, right? Is it accurate? That's again another myth, right? You would lose a lot of control. The accuracy will be, a point of discussion. Our systems, or let's say the technology, has advanced significantly over the last few years, that accuracy has significantly increased. You're spending less and less time in managing something, and spending more time in strategizing, in efforts that really value, or um, uh, take more out of what is capable from you as a team member within the organization, not really taking those clerical steps. It takes away the guesswork. It brings in a lot of efficiency in terms of time and money across as well. And this is something that I've seen as a part of a test that I've done across a lot of hotels, that when they start using tools and break away the silos that exist within the organization with the help of AI and those niche tools that is available, you completely flip the way that you've been managing your time. From a lot of time spent on data gathering, now it shifts over to strategy, right? You spend lesser and lesser amount of time in otherwise tasks that really do not add value to what you do during the day. So it increases your productivity, but it also increases significantly the accuracy with which you're able to project your budget, you're able to help your operations plan, and you're able to. One of the basic examples: if you got your rooms projections correct, budget correct, it helps your F&B, right? With the correct projections for breakfast, for it helps your spa with the correct projections for your weekend spa services, and so on and so forth. That is what helps you across the entire organization to break the myth about tools, AI only specifically for a rooms division rather than the rest of them. But then I'm speaking about AI and tools and systems for over the last 20 odd minutes. But then I also want to remind that you don't want to get yourself boxed in a tool that you bring in. Right? There's another myth that I constantly hear in the market, maybe for the company that I am in, or for the services that we offer, or in general for tools of the similar kind as well. That look, there is a big cost involved, and when is the return on investment coming in? Right? The old age question about the cost and the return on investment, right? Kitna deti hai? But then it's also critical. I think one of the messages that really gets lost somewhere in all of those that you hear about technology, company, and in general, is that it's a modular based approach is also available, right? Your property could be a very group busy property, whereas some of your properties, some of you on the call may not be really having a lot of groups. So do you need that function in the RMS? Maybe you don't need. Systems have developed so much now. Take our system, for example. Everything is modularized. You could pick and choose what is required for your business depending upon the stage your business is in, or the brand you are, or the type of the clientele you're targeting, and so on and so forth, which ensures that you're not paying for all that jazz, but you're only targeting what is exactly needed out of your product as well, right? We speak a lot about efficiencies, but we need to be efficient about the solution that you have as well. So if you do not need, there's 10 spokes here, but if you don't need seven out of them, choose only the three of them, so that reduces your cost, obviously increases your return on investment faster. That is, not about increasing, but it makes it faster, right? To what you could have done in about 6 months, now it gives you return within the next month, second month, the third month. So systems are already paying for itself. The AI is already paying for itself as well, right? And that's, I think, a critical messaging that as an organization or as a revenue leader in your organization, if you want to sell that across to your board, across to your owner, across to your asset manager as well, be aware that the previous perception of cost is not so much there, right? There is options available to make the systems lighter and lighter based upon your requirement, so that it caters to your exact need, but also to your budgeting needs as well. Um, yeah, and that does really translates into obviously building in efficiencies, building in faster ROI, as I mentioned. But in summary, what I would like to mention here in general is, I spoke about all those positive maximization, the profit potential uplift, right? Those are marked here. A quick snapshot for you to remember, right? The 2% profit uplift, the 5% profit uplift, the 6% uplift if you change the way that you price, the upsells, bring in the right intel so that your sales and your other departments can also get some additional uplift out of those inventories as well. And obviously the time gain, right? Something that cannot be really equated with the with the profit ADR and the RevPAR increase, but it obviously translates in some way or the other to better decision making, to more profitable decision making for you. The math is easy, right? Keep on adding that. And that is, like I said earlier, right? Don't think about that is what you would gain, but think on these ways if you have to speak to someone that that's the revenue that you're losing out every day. Um, and then I would just wanted to, when I started off with a what if question, right? What if your budget is conservative? What if I told you that your budget, what you can achieve is significantly higher than what you've planned for your budget for the next financial year? I think this is your opportunity to be that difference in your organization, to leave or maybe create a legacy in terms of the growth or the uplift that you have, and bring in that change. I know that bringing in a change, specifically in hotels who have not really adopted technology before, is significantly different, right? But it's also something that's happening on our every day-to-day basis as well, right? Think about how many times have you gone to a bank recently, right? Growing up, I would remember that I would have been there almost a few times during the month to do a lot of activities, but not anymore, right? There's always that change. And when I speak to a lot of revenue leaders or even GMs and the asset managers, the biggest question in terms of regret is always about things that they have not done. It's not about regretting something that you've done before. So I hope your regret is not about not using an AI tool when it is available for you. So with that, I'm going to stop here, right? If you agreed with what I mentioned over the last few minutes, I'll be more than happy to discuss that with you in general. If you didn't, I'll be thrilled to speak on that further with you as well. Because when there is a dissent or when there is opposite reaction, right, that is when I'm able to understand what exactly, where is that exactly is that coming in from, and how either I need to position that better, or whether if there's some other solution that needs to be reflected upon to identify, or let's say to cater to that business risk that you mentioned as well. And that's where I come in, right? So you've got my contact details here, and will be available through as well. We'll be more than happy to talk about that more um, as we go through through this engagement. With that, I'm going to pause here. Like I said, 35 minutes of me blabbering. Hopefully, something interesting. Back to you then, Jacob.
Thank you so much, Murphy, for the interesting session. Uh, it's another interesting time of the webinar at this point where we invite our participants to unmute and you can ask your questions. If you would not like to unmute and ask a question, you're also free to type in your questions in the chat, and I could then read those out to Murphy to answer that. It could be anything, any question pertaining to, it could be objections, it could be what if scenarios or anything of that sort. So I think he's covered a lot of ground, Murphy, in this session. So please do feel free to unmute and ask those questions. I have an announcement though. In addition to what Murphy had mentioned, I have left a link in the chat where you could go to the IDS Next Marketplace. You find ideas tile there, and you could actually, reach out to ideas, directly, and they will get back to you for inquiries and stuff like that. So, with that, please do feel free to unmute and ask questions. We are waiting for you. Murphy, I've got a few questions already.
Uh,
I think you have covered this in some way, but just to recap, what do you say are the key challenges for growing a revenue culture, especially from an emerging market scenario? Because you have developed markets with, who use revenue management. It's like a PMS, right? You don't
yeah.
do without revenue management. So in the emerging market scenario, what do you say are the key challenges for growing a revenue
Yeah.
culture?
I mean, from an emerging market perspective, that is good, right? Because when I travel across Asia Pacific as well, right, there are so many markets, and including India as well, right? Pockets of different tiers of cities as well, where the adoption of revenue management as a tool is still looked upon as a matter of leisure, right? A matter of luxury, right? You would want a PMS, but RMS maybe at some time later. And I think that goes with some of the myths that is involved as well, right? So, for example, the cost. Right? I spoke about cost and ROI, but I think there's a lot of industry which feels that the cost of revenue management is significantly high versus the return on investment. There's also a faction which thinks about the data accuracy. Look, my properties data is not good. Right? We've not been really good with market segmentations, rate codes, management, and so on and so forth. But trust me, there's no hotel which has got 100% accuracy in terms of way that they manage. It's all human at the end of the day, right? But I think the best part about technology is that even with all of that, the system is able to identify those different patterns or your different business practices, even if that involves about 10-20% of a risk on a day-to-day basis or inaccuracy on a day-to-day basis. The system understands that inaccuracy, right? There's also the last point that I really want to more and more come to understand this, Jacob, is about underestimating planning in an emerging market. I think we've all heard this so many times, the Nike logo, right? Just do it, right? You get a budget and you just do it. Get it, you will get it, you'll get there. Or maybe anyone on the call, right? If I ask you how long is your office from your home, you would say that about 20 minutes without traffic, right? That without traffic, right? I think that is the key point there, because all of us are in general tuned to think positively without any resistance, right? So you underestimate the resistance that is coming about in the market, the resistance to the budget that you have planned, and the planning that is associated with it as well. And I think those in summary, it's a perspective, Jacob, about cost data and the planning requirement to get to those profitability that you're always aiming at.
Absolutely. Okay. So again, to the audience, please feel free to unmute and ask any questions that you may have. It could be any question related to whether you need to have a qualified revenue manager to run this. Are they capable of running this without a revenue manager? I do not know what questions you have, but definitely there would be enough questions for you. Please do feel free to unmute and ask. In the meantime, Murphy, there's one more
Yeah.
question is like in order to have a revenue culture, we need to have complete visibility of performance. So do you show the big picture?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question, right? Because I mentioned some of it, a part of it during my session today as well. But I would like to bring in an example here, right? Consider maybe you're in a wedding, in a party, right? A wedding in Delhi, and you're dancing on the floor, right? If you're on the floor, you can only see what is happening just around you, right? You've got your line of sight only around those people. But let's say the DJ or the person on the console or anyone who's managing the event there, right? He's got a better view get to see the entire flow, gets to understand where and what is trending versus not. So you get a better perspective, and that is exactly, I think, what is important from your questions perspective as well, Jacob, about having that visibility, the big picture visibility, which is very, very crucial. And it's something that we've always strived to work through. There are tools that I have access to as part of the ideas environment, which gives the hoteliers a lot of visibility into the big picture of data. But I think, like I mentioned in one of my slides as well, data is in abundance these days, right? The question is, how easily can you narrow focus into the particular element that you need? And that is where a tool like some of the ones that we have comes in really handy, because it gives you the big picture, but it also helps you to swiftly slice and dice to a stage to identify an opportunity or a challenge that you really want to focus on, rather than spending hours and hours together going through information and then wasting time here, there, and then finally identifying something or digressing at some point of time. Right? I think that is very critical, not just bringing the big picture, but also being able to narrow and focus easily and faster.
Absolutely. All right, so I'll pause for a couple of minutes for our participants to ask any questions you have. Please feel free to ask those.
And in case,
Hello, good afternoon.
good. Sorry.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes, yes.
Yes. Hi. Thank you for the session, Mr. Murthy. It was really wonderful and provided great insights. And thank you,
Thank you,
Mr. Jacob,
Shrutej.
for bringing Mr. Murthy on board. And I'm a second year Bachelor of Science student at ASMS College of Hotel Management, Pune itself. I'm interested in revenue management, and I'm willing to take a career in the revenue industry itself.
Excellent to know that.
Yes, sir. So, sir, you spoke about cost of acquisition as being one of the main costs, or in the age of this internet booking sites or dominance of OTAs and GDAs. So I had a question: how does a hotel balance the cost of acquisition, or maintain lower cost acquisition, and also be competitive on the OTA? Because a lot of consumers, majorly leisure, they look on the rankings of OTAs and they trust OTAs more than other places. So how does a property maintain lower cost of acquisition and also ranking on, you say, GDS or OTAs or any other sites? Thank you.
Absolutely great question. So, now, first of all, I'm thrilled to hear that you're thinking about revenue management while in college as well, right? Because to me, a couple of decades back when I passed out of college, revenue management was not an existing field as well, right? It was only about operations. But yes, very valid points you mentioned there, right? And I think that is where surfacing the right information in terms of costs is important, because the hotels needs to maintain a balance, right? You know that you would not be able to survive only on direct bookings, because there's a lot of other OTAs and channels, and those would keep coming through, right? You would have Make My Trip on one day, you would have an Expedia, Booking.com, and some of the other channels will keep coming through. But the question is always about maintaining that profitability, maintaining that balance, understanding what is the base business that you want, and at what point do you start saying that, look, I don't want this business at from this channel, because I think I've got enough information to rely on direct bookings coming through for the remaining inventory that I have, or different packages or contracts that I have. The other part that you also mentioned is, remind me the second part, sorry.
It was about the rankings on these
Rankings,
OTAs, as
yes.
you
So
have.
again, a critical one. So we've got tools available in RMS and the other systems as well, where the systems can connect with tools which keep a track of the ranking for every hotel and correlate it with price. So it's quite possible that within your market, competitive market, you're ranked much higher, but you're pricing lower. So there is an opportunity there then for you to increase your price because of your rank availability, right, in comparison to your competition set. So that is where the systems have more and more advanced now to ingest a lot of other information like the rankings that you mentioned as well, to look out for opportunities where I can now improve my pricing and my controls based upon the ranks that I command in the market that I am in, to take benefit and maximize the profit options as well.
Thank you. That answers my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shrutej, for that question. And anyone else among the participants, any other questions, please? I would like to add one point here, Murphy. You can
Yes.
correct me if I'm wrong. There are many systems nowadays, and there's a lot of hype around artificial intelligence and all that in systems these days. But I would say that demand forecasting or forecasting in general is an artificial intelligence feature. And you guys have been doing this for ages now without really calling it as AI, right? So artificial
Correct,
intelligence is
correct.
already available with you.
Yeah, I've been speaking about AI over the last 1 year significantly, and maybe that's why I did not bring it up. But I think AI is a very abused word, right?
Right.
People understand, or let's say, between AI and automation. Automation is something that you do on a day-to-day basis, and you just automate it, right? It is not taking a decision for you; it is just automating it. You're automating the forecast. But the AI that our company works with, SaaS in general, it's involved in different verticals and different markets. AI is all about decision making. The price that you command in the market has an impact on the forecast. The forecast also has an impact on the price, right? I think that is where draws the line between AI and automation. And I think we've been doing it over and over for more than about 33 years now. And I think that is the reason why we don't speak about it much, because it's something that we feel is very, by nature, the simplest of
Yeah,
the things
taken
to
for
do.
granted. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Right. So to everyone, we are reaching end of session. So if you have any question, please feel free to unmute and ask or type in your chat. Murphy, I think we can move to the next slide. So here's the feedback. We appreciate every one of you. You can just point your camera at this, your mobile phone camera at this QR code, or click on the link and then send us a feedback. There's also the feedback form in the chat, which my colleague has just put in. Feel free to fill that up so that we can improve upon our sessions going forward. Any other questions? One last chance for everybody before we close.
Yes, if I may ask, sir, you have so many years of experience in the industry, and like, what is your favorite time to manage revenue, or favorite period of the year to, which time are you most excited in a year?
You broke up a bit, Shrutej. Favorite time of the year, or
favorite time of year, to
did you get the
set
question, Murphy?
prices, manage revenue,
Yeah, I
or
got it. And I think it's a very interesting one, right? Because if you ask somebody, a layman, he would say that the most busiest of the period, right? But I think even the non-busy period, like I mentioned, the very first couple of slides of mine is really interesting from a revenue management perspective as well, because every decision that you make has an impact to the total profitability or the top line and the bottom line revenues that you have. So it's about capitalizing, and capitalization doesn't generally happen on a busy Christmas weekend, but also happens during the lull period in Goa during your monsoon season as well, right? So it's all about making the most out of that current situation, and that's where revenue management comes in.
Perfect. So I'd like to add in closing that, there was a time in the past where you could really think of running hotels without even a PMS, but that's not the case today, right? So you need a PMS mandatorily for, managing your operations. So time has come with the complexity of the markets and, various factors where you need to have an RMS. There's no choice but, to have a system. It's not a question of do I need it, but it's a question of how do I implement this. So Murphy has been informative in terms of how you can adopt a system, how easy it is, what is the ROI. But any further questions, please feel free to reach out to us on the link that I provided in our marketplace or directly to Murphy, and we'll happy to get back to you with more information. With that,
Absolutely.
Thank you once again, Murphy, for your time. Thank you everybody for joining in. Have a wonderful evening. Bye bye.
Thank you, Jacob. Thank you, team.